The opinions expressed on the following audio program are solely those of the host and the guests. Burner Podcast is an independently produced, not-for-profit show and is not associated with the Burning Man organization or its subsidiaries. The views expressed are not representative of the entire Burning Man community and are presented here for entertainment purposes only. In short, calm the fuck down. It's just a podcast.
All right, it is episode number 49, and it is 259 days till the man burns as of this recording. This show is on a bit of an energy spirit quest kick lately. I don't know if you've noticed. But we go through like a bunch of camp profile shows, and then it's all of a sudden a bunch of episodes that are like festival behind the scenes geekery. And in a perfect world, we'd spread these themes out more, but we don't want to make you wait for new episodes each week, so they kind of get recorded and go up. The primary guest on today's show does hold a special place in my heart. And I mean, they all do, don't get me wrong. But usually I meet the guests first, and then as a guest on the show. And then after we finish doing the show, a friendship forms, if you will, because they've spent a couple hours with me. And I don't know, now you can't sleep. Edward might be the person I've known the longest before actually sitting down to interview him. And I've been interviewing people for years. There's no correct or incorrect way to do this as an interviewer, but I prefer not to know much about the person I'm sitting down with ahead of time. This is just a personal preference thing. I like to dissect them very much while the recorder is going. I met Edward a couple of years back at a local coffee shop here in San Diego, and I was sitting there working on my laptop, and he was working on his, and I needed to reach under his table to plug mine in, and then this conversation began that has yet to stop. I think we started talking about ayahuasca somehow. I don't even know how that works. I don't know how you meet somebody randomly at a coffee shop and ayahuasca pops up, but that's what happened. And Edward is working on various fascinating projects, and he's led like a very fascinating life, as you will hear soon. You may have recently caught him on Halcyon's Hug Nation, where he spoke on his Story Consortium movement, which you'll hear a little thing about later in the show. Edward has a rich history of sitting in ceremony. There's actually another recording of us talking about an energy healing session that he performed on me personally. That particular show I was working on didn't quite come together right, but you know, maybe we'll release that conversation as bonus content or something. I don't know. Whenever I reference something that we don't end up using on the show, I threaten with doing that. Anyway, it was a really powerful experience, and I've had lots of these amazing experiences with Edward. He is someone that I've guided multiple seekers of healing to. And on today's show, we're going to be discussing the work that has taken up the majority of his time these days, and that is the Kambô frog. Kambô? I think it's pronounced Kambô. There's like a little accente on top of the A. I didn't know, really anything about this particular healing practice until today's interview, really. The concept of ingesting toad poison is a common image in pop culture. My mind immediately jumps to that Simpsons episode. I think like most people's do. They always like say, oh yeah, Simpsons. And most people do think it's hallucinogenic in nature, but it turns out the Kambô is not. This particular one anyway, like this frog. You're gonna hear all about that shortly. I will share this awesome tease with you, the story of the Kambô frog toad. There's a difference, right? Scientifically? I don't know. Anyway, their story and ayahuasca are intertwined. Ooh. As always, we'll start by getting to know Edward and his history, and eventually we'll work our way towards the work that he's doing now with this fascinating practice. Piercing your skin with frog poison and throwing up for 45 minutes. Damn, our social circles are into some weird shit. Stay tuned, because after the interview with Edward, you're going to hear 2 mini interviews with others who have experienced the frog ceremony. You'll hear from Charles and Rebekah, who graciously agreed to share their personal experiences with the frog. Charles runs an ibogaine aftercare center here in San Diego. What's ibogaine, you ask? Well, you should check out the previous episode of this show with guest Thomas Kingsley Brown, where he breaks all of that down for you. I don't remember what number that is right now, but look up Thomas Kingsley Brown. It's one of the earlier shows. And you'll be hearing from Charles again on a future episode of this show. So today's mini interview also does serve as a bit of a teaser for that. And then Rebekah, who has just returned from organizing a mini festival, so you might notice that her voice is totally gone. She's like no voice left. But she soldiered through and still showed up to tell her story. So we really appreciate the hell out of you for doing that. So let's dive into today's crazy ass journey on this show. Today's episode is entitled Our Friend the Kambô Frog. Ribbit. I go by Mr. Arash, even though nobody calls me Mr. Welcome to Burner Podcast.
On the first part of the journey, I was looking at all the life. There were plants and birds and rocks and things. There was sand and hills and rain. The first thing I met was a fly with the bugs and the sky with no clouds. The heat was hot and the ground was dry, but the air was full of sound. I've been through the desert on a horse with no name. It felt good to be out of the rain. In the desert, you can't remember your name, 'cause there ain't no one for to give you no name.
I love doing this to people after they're all swollen and fucking totally.
This is adorable.
It's pretty great.
So you said you're being interviewed for Vice?
Yeah.
This week? What is it? What is it for?
The article, as I understand it, the article is about integrative care in the wake of psychedelic experiences.
Nice.
And how important that is. So,
How did they find you?
it is a woman who I want to say she was at one of my storytelling shows, but I can't quite. I host so many events.
Yeah.
I'm not quite sure which one I met her at, but I think she was at one of my storytelling shows, or she might have been at the Aware Project lecture. The Aware Project, the psychedelic salon.
Yeah.
If you're aware of the Aware Project.
I went to that, the one where Rick Durbin was down here.
Rick Doblin, yeah.
Dublin, yeah.
My
Did
buddy,
you go to that one?
I was in Mongolia.
Okay, that's right.
I would have loved.
I was like, I did
gone.
not see you there. Yeah.
No, I was in Mongolia. My buddy Charles, who runs Samsara Aftercare Center, where I actually facilitate Kambô, he lectured at the last one on ibogaine and addiction, and I may have also met her there.
Interesting. We actually did an episode on ibogaine with Dr. Kingsley Brown from MAPS.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So he was actually the one that invited me to the Aware Project thing. So
nice.
Did make some contacts there. So that's that's definitely going to be a future show. We just kind of haven't gotten around to it.
Well, hopefully we can get Charles for this frog one, and then you can get him for the ibogaine one as well.
Yeah.
You've
got so many different things going on.
Yeah. I got a lot of pots and pans going on in the oven, but I'm super grateful for it.
Yeah. How do you know when out of like the 10 things that are calling you, like, does putting energy into one of them take energy out of the other one, or are you finding that it's like a snowball and they're all feeding each other? Like, where are you finding the time or the energy?
That's a great question, and the answer is they do sometimes feed each other, and there is a ceiling to that, and it's a ceiling that I can see, if that makes sense, And the message to me, like loud and clear lately, has been like, slow down, dude, like slow down. Around this time last year, maybe a couple months into the winter of last year, I got sick. I got like really sick, not only physically sick, but it definitely had an energetic aspect to it as well. And I was definitely spreading myself way too thin. And I like a measurement I like to use for myself is, are my actions coming from inspiration, desperation, or obligation? Yeah. And if they're not coming from inspiration, just like don't do them. Basically.
How do you tell the difference?
I know. I just know in my heart. I know. Does it feel like a cage? Yeah. If it feels like a cage, it's not coming from inspiration. Period.
Inspiration, obligation,
or desperation.
So desperation, would that be like desperation for money, for ego?
Any of it. Yeah. For recognition. For I think those two are a big thing. Like. Yeah. For me, it's, and I think for a lot of people, it can come down to money, which thank God, I'm so very grateful that I'm supporting myself doing things that feel very, very authentic to me and very, very good to me and that are, I know, helping people. But yeah, I never want to be, I never want to be coming from desperation and obligation is a tricky thing. Like thankfully, I feel like I'm good about not coming from desperation, but I've definitely had to strike that balance between like, am I coming from obligation or inspiration? Right. Because I do host a lot of public events, and I have a lot of people reaching out to me, and a lot of them, and like, woe is me, like great problems to have, but like a lot of people I think just want to spend some time with me. And I find that usually, unless they're like close old friends, that's usually because they have some manner of spiritual questions and they really they need a sounding board. And I'm so happy to do that. And I love doing that. And I have had and continue to have those people in my life as well. And I just don't always have the time, you know? Yeah. So it is kind of it's a balance for sure. What I've started doing is actually telling people I can talk to them on the phone rather than like, no, I literally actually don't have time to go get coffee. So
yeah, for like 3 or 4 years ago, for the other podcast that I co-host in the hip hop scene, we interviewed a famous video director by the name of Jason Goldwatch. And I was asking him, I'm a music video director myself, and I was asking him like, how did you know when it was time to start charging? And he said, when I just didn't have time anymore.
Exactly.
He's like, when it's Friday night and I have to give up my social time in order to edit your video, I'm going to have to charge you. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
But up until then, he was like, doing it for free, doing it. You know, you just got to create, go with the inspiration. And then when it cuts off, you know, it's interesting. So I that's a question that I wonder about a lot too, like the inspiration versus desperation, obligation part. Like, here's an example. I noticed a while back, I can't say when, that, and this is a silly example, but like when I would write like a status update or some sort of a blog post or something, when I would write something that came from inspiration, it would be, I would write this like incredibly long ass thing, you know, like multiple paragraphs that normally people would scroll past on like Facebook, but it would get tons of reaction and tons of likes and comments and shares. And then I would catch myself from time to time posting something in an effort to actually get likes. And it happened, you know, less and less often as I became more in tune with sort of who I am and where I'm at. But I would definitely see that people would pick up somehow.
Oh yeah.
on that you're reaching. You know, and it's funny. So even with the ones that do come from inspiration, I'll still get a couple of my friends that'll like jab me about it. Yeah. Like, all right, you're trying to get likes, but then like they'll be overwhelmingly overshadowed by the 30 other people that are leaving comments or, you know, liking it and sharing it and messaging me privately about how inspired they were.
Absolutely.
So like that said, how does it work, like, on the flip side of that? Because I feel like, you know, people like us, like, we're on the same page about, like, you go after inspiration, you try to spread light and love into the world, and that works itself out. But then you have, like, people like, and this is, I feel like it's such a cliche example, but somebody like Trump, who is just very good at manipulating massive amounts of people. Mm-hmm. Where does that come from? Where does that particular energy come from? Where is he getting the inspiration?
Oh, good God, man. I didn't think we were going to talk about Trump.
It doesn't have to be Trump specifically. But you know what I mean about people that are very successful about galvanizing and motivating people, even though they're not coming necessarily from a place of inspiration? Or maybe they are.
Maybe they are. And that's my answer to that, is maybe they are. And everyone has a purpose in this world, even if that purpose is to fulfill a role as a provider of contrast. And people often do things or act in ways that perpetuate darkness and feelings that perpetuate more acts of darkness, because I personally believe that it's their karma, it's their role this time around to be purveyors of contrast. Yeah. Because we need them. And that's a very, I suppose, long-minded or peripheral viewpoint. Right. But I do my best to eschew that and to be reminded of that in my everyday life of like, yeah, this is 4 years and life is very, very, very long, and we move through cycles of contrast, and we need light and we need shadow. We need absolutely both of them. And
it's the yin and yang.
Exactly. Yeah. It just is what it is. So it's up to us to decide, like, do we take it personally or not?
What if for those who consider themselves purveyors of love and light, how do these people, like, what is the mission of these people when faced with somebody that seems to be fulfilling their karmic obligation or inspiration of being the darker side of things? Like, are we trying to save them? Are we ignoring them? What are we doing with them?
Nothing. Walk your talk. Walk your talk. Tend your garden. A lesson that I've learned the hard way is that it is the aim to be a lighthouse, right? And a lighthouse just shines at the point at which it has been placed. And I think some of them turn a little bit, and that's it. That's it. If there's a boat way, way, way out there, the lighthouse doesn't move that way. And maybe the boat will find the light and maybe the boat won't, but the lighthouse doesn't move. It's the difference. It's been explained to me by a good friend and teacher of mine, and this is a teaching that I resonate with very strongly. There's a difference between I'm here for you and I'm there for you. I will never be there for anyone. I will always be right here for them.
What does that mean?
It means that you don't go where they are to help them. You stay where you are, and they can come to that light if they want to. But you can't teach people what they're not willing to be taught, and people don't want to be saved. And furthermore, you can't, and this is where it gets tricky as a healer, is like, it's not all supposed to come out when you think it's supposed to come out. And that might not even mean in this lifetime. Yeah. Some people have to hit rock bottom. Sometimes an entire species has to hit rock bottom, which might be what this is about. Yeah. But you can't try to save someone that doesn't want to be saved. And maybe someone only gets a little bit of healing. I worked on a client today. This happened to me 2 hours ago. I worked on a client, and there was something in her solar plexus. And it was like, it was tied up, basically. It was nice and cinched up, and the message was clear. It's like, not tonight, man. Like, that is not meant to be untied tonight. So we get what we get when we're supposed to get it. Like, you follow the breadcrumbs along, and some people never see them in the first place. But, it's the old adage of if you were to, it's kind of like people have Stockholm syndrome to the darker side of themselves and to society. And if you were to come along and give the person the key to their cage and be like, come on, it's a beautiful day outside, a lot of them be like, are you crazy? It's safe in here, and I spent a long time decorating this place, you know? Yeah. So, and I've learned that lesson the hard way of like, you just tend your own garden, man, and just shine your light and do what you can do. And oftentimes for me, that's being extraordinarily nice to people in customer service positions and smiling at people as I walk by them on the street and doing my best to realize that in their own way, they're just a different expression of me. Yeah. I am that. I am compassion, you know? So
that's wow. Yeah. I can tell you if this podcast ended like right now that I'll be here for you versus I'll be there for you. I'm fine with that. I am satisfied with that. I'm good. Like we could totally end it, but there was a reason. Listeners, hang on with me for a second because like not everybody is. And I like to joke like into the woo because one of the things that I've generally discovered is that this is my thought process on it. I want you to tell me how you feel about it. I am suspicious of people who call themselves gurus but take everything, including themselves mostly, way too seriously.
Absolutely.
Like if you don't have a sense of humor about it, I'm like, that smells like ego to me.
I could not agree more. Two of my favorite quotes by two men who I respect. Terrence McKenna said, follow plants, not gurus. And Alan Watts, and this, I love this one. Three men, I'll add a third quote to it. Alan Watts said, life should be taken sincerely, not seriously. And I was discussing this with a friend the other day, and I believe that sincerely adds a more feminine aspect to it and a more caring, nurturing aspect to it. Yeah. Sincerely is much more feminine than seriously. Yeah. Seriously is like, no, this is serious. And sincerely is like, no, I'm really sincere about this. Yeah. There's a huge difference there.
A smile is sincere.
A smile is sincere. A law is serious. You know, there's a difference. And the third is Oscar Wilde, who said life is far too important to be taken seriously. And it's just, dude, I totally agree with you. And I get pretty woo sometimes. Yeah. And I'm from the East Coast, man. Like, I still carry that. And I'm very much into pragmatic spirituality. Like, how can we use the lessons that we get from our spiritual path as tools so that we can experience immediate results in our life as we strive to live an excellent life, Absolutely. A high quality of life? Like, what's the point, man? Yeah. And I find that often the people that are really dressed the part maybe have less of a grasp upon these things than they would like to others to think that they do. Yeah. You know?
Are science and spirituality at odds?
That's a fantastic question. It depends on who you ask. It depends on the scientist or the energy healer or shaman. It depends who you ask. I think that the future is the merger of the two. Yeah. Absolutely. I think that the future is the merger of the two. A good friend of mine is a PhD he works in the pharmaceutical industry, and he's super smart, and I like him a lot. And we've had great conversations about this. I believe that the future lies in the merging of the two. Yeah, is that
we haven't developed the capabilities to measure some of these things. Like when we talk about energies. Yeah. Because when I came in here, this is why I said let's hold this off for the show. You commented on the fact that I'd lost some weight, and I've been struggling with my weight, my whole life, and it's been all kinds of yo-yoing, and I've gone through every kind of diet and workout program and everything you can imagine. And most recently, I've had the most success with it. And it's due to a variety of factors, like learning better about how to eat and all these kind of things. But just even coming around, I think, psychologically to some of the changes I needed to make. Let me kind of shift back to the beginning. Correct me if I'm wrong, but like generally the thought energetically has existed that if we have difficulty with feeling comfortable in our skin, that can be connected to certain energetic blockages, some things that we haven't sort of made peace with. I remember like years ago, I had a friend say that she had observed that people that have difficulty maintaining a healthy weight, she had found seem to have a common factor of having sexual trauma in their childhood. And most recently, there have been more studies coming out that are finding that there seems to be a pretty strong correlation.
Interesting.
So it's almost like speaking from a spiritual angle, we are trying to create more distance between our consciousness and others, and becoming like intimacy with others, becoming closer with other people, et cetera, et cetera. But coming from like a scientific standpoint, you could break it down to like, okay, you're not eating right, you're not doing this thing right, you're not doing that thing right.
Yeah. In my mind, like you can't have one without the other. They're all part and parcel of the same thing, which is us. I mean, there's an energetic, there's an emotional root to every illness. Period.
Yeah.
Period. And our emotions, I mean, you can't measure the nuances of emotion. Like maybe they can hook up things to your brain and your heart that are going to say, okay, he's happy now and he's sad now and it's lighting up. But you can't measure the nuances. Yeah. I'm sorry, you just can't. You can't. There's no measurement of a sonata or a poem or a fine composition. There's, to go back to Alan Watts, like he talks about how dancing is like, it's something we do just to like do it. Yeah. You can't put a measurement on certain types of human expression. You just can't. And my PhD friend who works in the pharmaceutical industry he says this, not me, because I would never be so bold as to say this because I don't know enough about science, but he says that science is just starting to catch up with spirituality. And that example you gave kind of makes that point of like, they're just kind of starting to prove this stuff that we've known forever, like the Heart Math Institute and measuring compassion. And I wish I could remember his name, but there's the Japanese doctor that measures the effect on water molecules. He'll put a piece of tape on the side of a glass of water that says "I love you" and one on another glass that says "I hate you." Have you seen these?
No,
it's crazy. I wish I remembered his name. And the water molecules in the glass that says "I love you" are these perfectly shaped, sacred geometry. It's beautiful. And in the one that says "I hate you," I mean, it looks like a train wreck. It looks like a train wreck.
I do remember that was one of my 850 epiphanies after my first DMT trip. Was how much we store away in our bodies.
Oh, absolutely.
You have all this anxiety that you can try to correct with talk therapy or medication. And I mean, for me, I ended up, luckily, I'm not judging anybody who's on medication. I just, for my personal journey, I didn't have to. But I ended up releasing so many different, like my posture changed.
Oh, yeah, totally.
Literally, like the way that I stood changed. There was a time where I would feel flushing of my face and my heart racing when I was faced with any sort of like confrontation. Mm-hmm. And then over years of meditation, that gap between being able to collect myself and respond was shrinking little by little. But after my first DMT trip, it was just gone. It's immediate.
And there has been a lot of research done on microdosing with LSD, microdosing with mushrooms. It's becoming more and more mainstream. I mean, Tim Ferriss, who is a fairly mainstream podcaster and very, very popular, he has been on record as saying the majority of the billionaires that he knows all practice microdosing.
Wow.
All of them.
Wow.
You can look that up. Like, he's on record saying
That's
that.
Nuts.
So...
Well, he's got a new book out that just came out.
The Tools of Titans.
Yeah,
I love
gotta
Tim
read
Ferriss.
that.
He's awesome.
Yeah, he's amazing. He's a machine.
He's inspired me a lot for sure. Going back to being super busy.
When did you get into energy work? When did this start? This chapter of your life? Would you say this is the most recent chapter, or has there been a couple already?
Totally, man. It's been 3 years.
Yeah,
it just went really, really, really fast for me. Yeah. Like I went from
anybody who talks to you would guess you've been doing this for like 3 decades.
It's crazy. It just went really fast. I mean, I had my awakening, quote unquote, at Burning Man. at the temple in 2013, dead sober, not on anything, middle of the afternoon. I think it was around noon, and went to the temple. I was a virgin. I was a pretty prepared virgin. I was a virgin, and I was too prepared. I had too much shit, and I had read too much about Burning Man, which led to all these expectations and me needing like the whole Playa survival kit to go anywhere. So I was like still very much a virgin, but in this different way of being like far too prepared. Yeah. And I walked into the temple and I took a right, and someone had built a shrine, and it was big child's blocks, like the child's blocks with the letters on them, the alpha blocks, alphabet blocks. Yeah. And it said daddy. And a hard seed that had been buried as deep as I could shove it inside of my soul cracked open, and what came pouring out of me, it was an ayahuasca experience without ayahuasca. Wow. And I wept. I don't know if I had ever, I know I hadn't wept like that at that point in my life. And I wept and I wept and I wept. And I realized that I was not going to progress any further as a human being until I was able to forgive my father for being completely emotionally and mostly physically absent my entire life, until I was able to forgive for that abandonment and all the anguish that went along with it. And it took me 2.5 years from that burn. It took me 2.5 years I can honestly say I've done it. Yeah. But it took me a really long time. But then from there, it was just like, it was just one thing after another. I mean, different plant medicines started showing up in my life, and different teachers started showing up in my life. And I went out and did the Reiki course, and I started doing breath work, and I took a Theta course, and I did all this stuff. But I mean, as far as like my energy work practice, it's just a practice of listening. I mean, the whole intent is to be hollow as a bone, and to let the energy come through and just let it go where it's going to go. I mean,
what were you doing before your first burn? What was going on in your life?
I was getting my life back together. I was a little over a year out of the second major rock bottom of my life. The first being at the age of 25. This one was at the age of 33, in which I lost an absolutely incredible woman because I was addicted to sex and pornography. And I was carrying a lot of shame around that, and didn't know, or thought I didn't know, how to be in a loving relationship based upon honesty. And I always felt like she was way too good for me. And so my subconscious went about setting up a plot where I showed her just that she was too good for me. And I went through a pretty major period of darkness, and I started to break out of it mostly because of storytelling. And that's what led to me building the Story Consortium down the road. I started speaking with So Say We All, local storytelling group, and always wanted, because I can tell a tale, and I was pretty caught in victor ego back then. Still caught in victim ego a bit, but I like to be the center of attention back then. And I wanted to tell the funny stories. I wanted to be the funny guy up on stage. And instead, what came pouring out of me were just the darkest, just tales that I hadn't told anyone, of shame and addiction and abuse and abandonment and all this shit. And it was kind of like what you were saying of the posts, of when your Facebook posts, when they come out as these super authentic things. And that's what I was going to say, is that everyone has an authenticity sniffer. Yeah. Everyone has it. We can detect authenticity, most of us at least. And these stories that were coming out of me, those began to heal me, like really airing those on stage. And that's where I was at when I went to my first burn, was about probably 6 months into that journey of just letting my skeletons out of the closet very, very publicly as a performance storyteller. And from there, it all just, it just snowballed and snowballed and snowballed. And then before I knew it, I was treating people and in apprenticeship with different medicines, and then it got to the point about a year ago where with Kambô, which is the frog medicine, which I do facilitate, I had to make a choice. It was presented to me like, are you gonna just keep this amongst your close circle of friends and family and work on them? Or are you gonna open up your doors? Mm-hmm. And the message was that it was irresponsible of me to not open up my doors. Yeah. And since then it's just been more and more and more. I don't even think you know this because we haven't spoken in a while, but I quit my day job. So I don't even do that anymore. I was a professional tour guide for 10 years, and now all I'm doing is my healing practice, my coaching practice, Kambô, and running the Story Consortium and writing my novel, but that's like my private thing. So, and as soon as I quit my day job, it was like, I mean, within a week I had a private client out of state. I got flown to Arizona to work on people. I got the job at the aftercare center, and it's just been one thing after another of really just being able to help people. It feels really great.
Yeah. So let's get into the frog. Like how was Kambô introduced into your life?
Kambô was introduced into me. I had heard about it via just being involved in other plant medicines, and I always wanted to do it, but I couldn't find a practitioner because there's not a ton of practitioners.
Right.
It's not a very glamorous medicine, and I think that might turn people off. I finally found a practitioner, and I saw her a bunch of times. I used to drive all the way out to Desert Hot Springs to do it.
Well, let's explain to listeners that aren't familiar with it what it actually entails. What had you heard about it that made you want to experience it? What is it exactly?
Well, Kambô is the secretion of a frog in the Amazon rainforest. It's known as the giant monkey tree frog, and the species name is the Philomedusae bicolor. And the secretion, and this is beautiful because this is where science meets spirituality, because this stuff has been studied by scientists for over 30 years now. There's over 40 pharmaceutical patents pending for the peptide chains in Kambô. So there's a heavy explainable aspect to this stuff. And there's a whole lot of mystery to it as well, which is part of the reason I'm attracted to it. So this secretion essentially, they don't kill the frog for it. The frog will come out after a good rain, or they'll sing certain ikaros, certain sacred songs to draw the frogs out. The frogs have zero natural predators because this stuff is activated by the enzymes in saliva, and it's secreted from their glands, which means that, say, a jaguar picks this thing up and gets it in his mouth, within almost immediately, he's like, he's starting to get sick from this. So...
And this, when we say they, we're referring to tribes along the Amazon basin?
Yeah, specifically the Metses are the Peruvian tribe that works with it. I can get into the legend of how they found out about this stuff later on.
Is there any connection to ayahuasca and the tribes that practice that?
Absolutely. Big time. Well, I'll get into the story now. There was a shaman called Kambô, and this is the lore, so gosh knows when this was, but a shaman called Kambô, and back then... only the shaman drank the ayahuasca to heal people. So if you went to the shaman and you needed to be healed, you didn't drink the medicine. The shaman drank it, and he would go up into spirit, and spirit would tell him how to heal you. This whole thing where everybody gets to drink the medicine, it's rather new, actually. It hasn't been like that for, as I understand it, the majority of the time that we've known about this. So Kambô, the shaman, drank ayahuasca to learn how he could heal his village. There was a sickness going around his village, and he went on a walkabout in the jungle, and he laid down and he went on his journey, and when he came to, there was a frog in his hand, and the frog told him how to use it to heal his village, and he came back and he used the frog secretion to heal his village, and when he passed away, his spirit passed into the frog. His name was Kambô, and over the years it's just turned into Kambô. And that secretion is that is the medicine. So they'll draw the frog out of the forest. They don't kill it, they just stress it out. So they'll string it up, they'll blow smoke on it, sometimes they'll put little reeds up its nose. They just stress the thing out, basically. And they take the secretion off of the frog with a stick, and they put it onto a bamboo stick. For the best medicines, they'll only use one secretion from one frog, and then they'll let it go, and then they'll do the second the second night they'll do the same thing with a different frog and let it go, and they'll repeat it on a third night. That's good, strong medicine, because you're not keeping this poor frog tied up and getting all of its defense mechanism off of it, so it's energetically in alignment. You can feel medicines. You can, when you hold a Kambô stick, I can feel if the medicine has been harvested ethically or not, because you can feel the willingness in the medicine, if that makes any sense. Right. And thank God I have a really good source for this stuff now. It's very good, very strong. So
this I can tell my first thought process had been about that poor frog. And I thought about the teachings of Don Juan in the scene where he's grabbing is it frogs or lizards? Yeah. Doing the same kind of similar thing with lizards.
I haven't read that book in so long. I have to revisit it.
But I mean, there's many medicines that do come from stressing a poor little animal out for a little while.
Absolutely. And they don't kill it, so.
Burner Podcast.
All right, and we're back. Had a little bit of a break there.
Technical difficulties.
Yeah. So you were about to describe how the process works.
Yes.
How you actually use the frog. I mean, go ahead and describe how it works. What happens when I sit down to have this experience?
So you would sit down and there's a whole process of me going through exactly what is going to happen with my clients. I do my best to be extraordinarily thorough and set the space energetically, and do a grounding meditation and do a gratitude meditation, and then do a talking circle in which everyone can share their intentions. I put a lot of ceremony into it because I believe in that, and that's how I was taught. As far as the actual nitty gritty of how this goes down is are there practitioners who don't believe in doing the ceremony? Perhaps. I don't know. I don't know a lot of other practitioners because there's not a whole lot of us. So I have been told by people who have employed me that they've worked with other people who were a little less ceremonial about things. I don't know. I'm going on totally secondhand information there. Sure. The practitioner I learned from I'm ceremonial because I learned from her. Right. And so you'd found this practitioner. That's sort of what we were talking about. And you went in to have this experience. What was your experience? What happened? It was horrible. I ended up on the bathroom floor, actually thinking I was going to die. Yeah. It was terrible. So what are the steps exactly that happen? So are you in a home? Are you in a center? I was in a home. I mean, as far as where I do my ceremonies, you're sitting in the room. I do them, and I do them right here in my home. I worked at an aftercare center for patients who have gone through the Ibogaine, and I do privates as well. So I'll go into people's houses or people's spaces. And after all the ceremonial part is done and the very thorough explanation of what to expect is done, the way it's applied is through burns in the skin. I'll typically start one person off on no less than 3 and no more than 5. You can work with meridian lines on the body. This is on a needle? It's a piece of wood. Okay. In the jungle, it's called timshi, and it's a vine from the Amazon. I don't live in the Amazon, and I refuse to order these tiny sticks from Europe for £1 a piece. So I use juniper branches because it's a great size for it. And in the Mongolian shamanic tradition that I was fortunate enough to study in Mongolia over the summer, they use juniper for everything. Juniper carries prayers. Juniper carries blessings. So I use little pieces of juniper because it's just the right perfect size. So with the client, I would first defer to their intuition. Is there a spot on their body that's coming through? Is there a number that's coming through? We'll work with their intentions. Sometimes I'll work over the spot of old injuries that they want to work on. Sometimes I'll work over a certain organ. I do chakra treatments on the spine. So working over that power center to release whatever it is that needs to be released or healed that pertains to that specific power center. Are you puncturing skin? You are burning it down to the lowest dermal layer. Absolutely. Okay. Yeah. So it's quick. You get the stick really hot and you just, you get it on there, and then I scrape the skin off with a Q-tip And then I do that 3 times, 5 times, 14 times, whatever.
Does it hurt?
It's a burn. It doesn't feel great. But I always like to tell the people, because people are nervous going into this.
Yeah.
I like to tell people, like, I burn them and I'm like, okay, the easy part's over. Yeah. because it gets harder. Then I put the medicine on. The medicine is on a stick. It's on a bamboo stick. And the peptides are activated by the enzymes in your saliva. So you'll actually put a little bit of saliva on it and scrape it off with a knife until you get a couple of dots that look a little bit like, depending on the medicine, it's either white or light yellow, or sometimes it's a little bit greenish. It's usually white or light yellow, and it looks like little dots of wasabi. And it's just a little teeny dot. Yeah. And I will, for first-time clients, I'll only put on 1 dot to start with. It's called a test dot. And I want to see how they're going to handle the medicine. Okay. I'll burn 3 holes. They call them gates. You burn 3 gates. And I'll only put in 1 to see how they handle the medicine. I'm looking for any abnormal responses. I am looking for the profundity of the effect the medicine has on them. Like, in rare occasions, people will sign up and be like, let's do 3. Okay, let's do 3. Yeah. Rarely, but it happens. I'll put 1 on them and it's like, oh, damn, you only need 1, you know? So typically...
are you looking to see if they're having like a physical reaction, or what would be a less than ideal reaction?
A less than ideal reaction from 1 dot would be passing out.
Okay. Okay.
Would be an immediate purge, vomiting. Yeah. Would be an overwhelming sense of your heart racing faster than you want it to. Right. Would be severe anxiety. I would say those would be about it. Right. Those would be things that I would look for. I do this so much. I facilitate all the time. I can typically tell within 3 minutes what's going to go on with people.
What is the ideal response?
The ideal response is that you will feel, A, either you're just like, I don't really feel anything, or B, you feel like your face start to flush and get hot. Your heart starting to pump a little bit, and sometimes constriction in your face and throat. Yeah. Which we'll get into. This is something that happens. Sure. So 99% of the time, we're all good to move forward, and I'll put the remaining. I'll fill the remaining gates with the medicine. The medicine comes on very, very quickly. It is, as I've mentioned, full of peptides, and some of them break through the blood-brain barrier, and some of them go attached to the opioid receptors, which means they don't take no for an answer. I've read that certain peptides in this medicine attach to your opioid receptors with 1,000 times the strength of heroin. Wow. That's extraordinarily strong. Yeah. Difference being heroin and opioids leave your opioid receptors gaping wide open. Mm-hmm. When Kambô leaves your system, it shuts those. Okay. So it's very unique medicine in that way. It goes through the heart. So you'll hear your heart, feel your heart start to pump, blood start to race. It's extremely disorienting and uncomfortable. Those are the best words for it. Your face can swell up. Your throat may constrict. It's not dangerous, but it is uncomfortable, and it is disconcerting. Right. So I constantly have to remind people, like, don't worry about the throat. It happens. Your hands and feet may clench and unclench. You may feel dizzy. Your stomach may start to really hurt. Some people pass out. These are all normal effects. It's ordeal medicine. It's literally called it's ordealistic medicine because you are undergoing an ordeal. Right. I have people stay very, very hydrated while they're going through it, and then right before I work on them, I will have them chug 1.5 liters to 2 liters of water. The reason for that is Kambô, if you're thinking in terms of Chinese medicine, Kambô is fire. It's pure fire. It needs water. Yeah. The second reason is 75% of people will purge via vomiting, and you want to have some water to come out first. The third reason is, it's a metaphor, but frogs love water. This thing needs something to travel on as it's navigating your system. So
you're doing that. I'm immediately thinking about, like, have people thrown up all over your place?
Yeah, I mean, I have buckets, absolutely.
Are people good at aiming when they're in that state?
Yeah, I give them buckets, and I'm very, very thorough about describing positions that they may want to keep their body in. It's best to stay upright, because if you lay down, all the blood's going to run to your head, and your head will swell up even more. Child's pose is great, and all fours is great. When I put the medicine on people, say I'm working on 5 people, I don't put the medicine on someone and then I'm like, okay, next. I sit with that person sometimes for 20 minutes. And all I'm there to do, my main goal in that space is to be the ground under their feet, to just provide a very, very grounding energy. So energetically, that's my main goal, is to be a very grounding energy. If energy feels like it's stuck somewhere in their system, I'll help encourage the energy. But for me, it's a practice of like knowing when to act and knowing when to just sit and hold that space and let the frog do its work and let them work with the frog. So that's where that line lies for me. And it's just a practice of deep listening, essentially.
You said that your first experience was terrible. Like you ended up in the bathroom throwing up.
I ended up in the bathroom. I thought I had to throw up and shit. I probably did both. And I ended up ultimately just laying on the floor because it was cold. I was like, oh, it's cold on the floor. This is great. Kambô's miserable. It's not fun, but it's short. So it's like 30 minutes of getting beaten up by something that you just can't possibly defend yourself against.
As opposed to ayahuasca, which is like 10 hours.
Which can be, like 6 to 8. And, it's different, man, because like Aya, you can go through the tumult of Aya where you feel like you're just getting thrown around in the spin cycle of the universe and nothing makes sense and you're purging and blah, blah, blah. But usually that ends, and then you get to lay down and listen to really nice music. You know what I mean? With Kambô, it's intense and it's guaranteed to be unpleasant and uncomfortable. But the longest it typically lasts is 45 minutes, and then you're out of it. So you'll go through the purging. It's bile. It's pulling bile out of you, and it's pulling out, on a physical end, parasites. It's great for Lyme's disease. It's great for Crohn's disease, for fibromyalgia, for arthritis, for depression, for not anxiety, for weaning people off of psychiatric medications, for post-addiction care. I used it once. The most palpable example of physical healing I can give, I had to get a root canal, and the dentist said I had an infection in my gums, and he gave me these antibiotics. I'm like, I don't want to put that shit in my body. So I did a frog ceremony instead, and I asked it to heal my gums, and I could feel it shoot up to my gums and scan around, and then I puked a little bit, and it kind of ended about 15 minutes later. I went back to the dentist a day and a half after that ceremony. I was like, check out my gums. What's going on up there? And I'll never forget his face. He's like, they're completely healthy. They're like brand new gums. He's like, what? Did you do anything? I was like, no, man, I just started to feel better. It's like, fuck your antibiotics.
What drew you to it initially? Did you just want to experience what it was like?
Yeah, just through medicine circles, I wanted to experience what it was like. And I've probably sat with Kambô, I don't know, 24 times at least. My first, at least 10 ceremonies were all spiritual, emotional intentions. I didn't dive into the physical healing for a long time. And the spiritual, emotional stuff with Kambô is unbelievable. I call it Ganesh medicine. If you're familiar with the legend of Ganesh, the remover of obstacles, like Kambô gets shit out of your way. The other side of that coin is that means you gotta let it go. It's you gotta do the work once you do this stuff. Once you open that door, it's gonna be open. I've had emotional healing and revelations with Kambô that has just shaken me to my core. Stuff I don't even think I would have known that I needed to look at. Deep forgiveness, bringing up old childhood memories. I mean, all kinds of stuff that I've done emotionally with Kambô, and then getting into like super woo shit like ancestral healing and past life healing and all that, which we don't even need to touch on that because it's a little wooey, and I get that.
So, what what sorts of things would you say the majority of the people that you've treated come in for?
They kind of fall into three categories. One are people that I'm working with at the aftercare center, and those are people who have gone through ibogaine treatments in Mexico for the relief of their addiction.
Right.
And so they're coming to me. They're coming to me for all sorts of stuff. Sometimes it's physical healing, sometimes it's emotional healing, but it's usually revolving around the results of their addiction physically, or emotionally, what the hell pushed them into addiction in the first place. I would also put into that category people that I treat who are weaning off of antidepressants. It works really well with that stuff, really well. Like kind of astoundingly well, in my opinion. I've worked on a number of people who they just don't want to take their meds anymore. They're over it.
Yeah.
And they've read about Kambô, or they've heard about me, or however they find me, and to get them on a sequence, because you're supposed to do 3 ceremonies as close together as you can. The longest you would stretch that out would be 3 months. In the Amazon, they do 3 in a lunar cycle. So in between a new moon and a full moon, you want to do 3. I'm a big proponent of like, get them as close together as you can, because the medicine builds up in your system. So with those people, what I'll do is do one ceremony, lower their dosage of whatever med they're on. Do another one, lower the dosage. Do another one, stop taking it. And we've seen great success with it.
Yeah.
So they fall into that category as well. There is the people who are coming for pretty serious physical stuff, fibromyalgia, Lyme's disease, Crohn's disease, herpes, Hep C, HIV, arthritis. I mean, it's amazing for all kinds of physical maladies as well. I have not treated anyone who has cancer, is going through cancer treatment, but I know that it is used for that as well.
Yeah.
And then there are people who are coming in. They're kind of people who approach Kambô as they would approach any other spiritual healing modality, whether that be other plant medicines or breath work or meditation or some sort of spiritual coaching. You know, they're coming in because they realize that there are things that they need to shed or work with or deal with so that they can be happier.
Yeah.
And that can look at like all sorts of stuff. I mean, I've worked with everything from PTSD, sexual trauma, removing creative blocks, helping people find their voice, helping people release trauma around relationships with parents. I mean, you name it, tons and tons of stuff.
That last example that you gave actually did segue to my question, which is going to be, do you need to come in with an intention of something you're working on? Is that part of what the ceremony is connected to? Or could I just say like, I don't know, I just want to be better and I just want to come in and do a ceremony?
I will never work on a tourist. I'll put it that way. Okay. I'll never work on someone who's like, hey, I heard about this stuff, want to give it a run. Yeah. Like, no way, man. Sorry. Yeah. For people like that, I'm like, you have to come to Talking Circle for at least 2 months. I facilitate Talking Circles. I'm like, come to Talking Circle and let me see who you are and let me see that you're serious, and then we'll talk about working on you. As far as having an intention, it's great to have an intention, and that intention can be, you said something to the effect of, I want to be better in my life. Yeah. And boom, that's your intention. You don't have to necessarily know what it is, but you can just be like, I don't know, I just feel a little blah, and I want to feel less blah. Okay, fine. The intention's not for me necessarily, it's for the people. And I say this to anyone that I'm coaching through any sort of healing plant medicine modality, is that you're going out on a vast ocean of consciousness, and you're in this tiny little rowboat, and you have 2 oars, and one of those oars is your breath and the other one is your intention. Why are you here? Why are you in this? And in Kambô, I call, like, my other metaphor is that your breath is the brakes and your intentions are the oh shit handle. You know, like you need something to hold on to, of like, when you're in it and you feel like you're going to die, you're like, why the hell am I doing this again? Oh, yeah, this is why I'm doing this.
Right.
I've done it so much and developed such a strong relationship with the frog that I do a very systematic approach to the process where I will go through my intentions. Once I'm in the medicine where I'm like, okay, this is full, I'm in fifth gear with this stuff now, I'll think of my first intention. I'll feel the medicine shoot to where it's stored in my body, whether it be liver, brain, knee, wherever, and I'll purge it out. I'll do that with my second one. If I have a third one, I'll do it with my third one. I'll take a break, and I'll keep doing it until nothing comes out. I'm literally like working with the spirit of the medicine to squeeze myself completely dry. And that's what it does. When people ask for an explanation and they don't have a lot of time to hear about it, I just say your body's a sponge. It's absorbed, obviously, everything you put in it. It's absorbed everything around it environmentally, and it's also absorbed all the emotional stuff. And what Kambô does is it squeezes out that sponge.
Right. So I guess that's what I'm trying to understand is that, so let's say I come in with the intention to wean off of medication. If I had not come in with that intention, would I still be weaning off the medication? Or if I come in with the intention of weaning off medication, is it also purging me of other things as well? Like, how much does the intention affect the outcome?
That's a great question. To answer the second part of that question first, I'll just start with the first question. If you came in with intentions to start to heal your life in whatever way, and you were on some sort of medication, but you didn't have the specific intent to get off that medication, I mean, it's a very theoretical question, so I can't answer yes or no, but I could easily see a person in that situation just not feeling like they need the medication as much as they used to. So yes, I can totally see that organically happening. Yeah. Definitely. To answer the second part of the question, I can say an objective yes to that. You will always receive physical and emotional healing from any Kambô session. So in the Amazon, it's used as hunting medicine. The Metses use it. This stuff gives you superpowers, especially once you do it a couple of times. You will have your vision can be improved to the point that it's almost weird. Hearing improved to the point that you're hearing things you would never normally hear. It takes aches and pains away, removes fatigue from your body. So the Metses will take it before a hunt so that they can see monkeys hidden up in the canopy of the rainforest, so that they can hear everything, so that they can run without fatigue. And then spiritually, they use it to clear what they call penema. And penema is their blanket term for bad luck, depression, bad mojo, whatever you want to call it. So I always tell people you're always going to receive a little bit of both. And going back into this, we talked about this earlier in the interview. There's an emotional element to any physical malady. Period. The two are inexorably linked. So absolutely, you're always going to receive a little bit of both. Yeah.
What percentage of people vomit?
About 75 to 80%.
Okay.
The other purges would come out via using the bathroom, shaking, crying, and that's about it as far as purges. A lot of people that don't vomit will find that they're having to visit the restroom a lot in the wake of ceremonies, so later on that night or the next day.
It's kind of like it seems like the instinct would be to I don't want to vomit, but it's probably better if you do, because then you don't have to go take a shit 5 times for the next day.
I mean, you just don't want to fight it, whatever it is, you know. My favorite, honestly, is I really enjoy watching people have very emotional breakthroughs on this stuff and being able to bear witness to that and to be a part of it. I mean, I've worked on a couple of men recently who have had just really, really deep breakthroughs, really, really deep healing.
Were these men, did they have the intention of having that breakthrough? Or was that something that happened?
They were going in with emotional intentions. So their intention wasn't like, hey, I'm ready for a breakthrough. I'm ready for total shedding of this thing that I've been carrying for 35 years. Right. but they were going in for emotional healing, and that's just. I love being in that space with someone that I'm working with, to just be there for them, and just to be a source of support and compassion, and to literally, especially when it's another guy, because men don't get to do this stuff as much, or they don't feel like they can. So to hold another man who has been brought to the point where he's actually weeping, and to help him through that process, and to see him through the other side of that, is amazing. Yeah. It's amazing to bear witness and to hold that space.
What sorts of emotional breakthroughs what have you seen people have?
Oh gosh, I've seen people release trauma from being a baby. I have seen people actually come into forgiveness. Yeah. Yeah. For real. There's, and that's a big step. And that's something that not everyone gets into. And because of my experience at Burning Man, I'm fortunate enough to know what that feels like. And it's really hard, because forgiveness has no ego. Yeah. If you have to tell the person you forgive that you forgive them, you haven't forgiven them. Right. Period. It's like forgiving the dead. It's a voiceless thing. It exists in your heart. So I've seen people get into that space of sheer forgiveness. I have seen with women, I have seen it do really, really profound work on their womb space. We would call it doctoring. It is a doctor. The frog is a doctor. I have seen it with women being able to release sexual trauma, whether that be from childhood incidences or just old boyfriends. Yeah. I personally, the deep, deep, deep emotional breakthrough that I experienced, to which I made reference before, was that, and I'm comfortable sharing it, that I needed to forgive my mother, who is a saint, and I have an extremely good relationship with, and always have, for not being everything that I needed her to be in the wake of my parents' divorce. I was 9. And all of a sudden, she was juggling 25 balls and trying to raise 2 children on her own, and going to school and trying to support us, and having my dad who was not paying child support, all this stuff. All of a sudden, it was just like life was like, here you go. Yeah. Deal with this. And in the meantime, I was 9 and I was shattered and I had a lot of needs, and she was doing everything she could to meet all of them. But she's a human being. She couldn't possibly meet all of them. Yeah. It's possible. And as an adult, I'm totally fine with that. And I realize that. And I know that she did everything she could, and that she would bend over backwards for me. But there was still that remnant of that 9-year-old in me who didn't understand that, and who was like, but I am desperate right now. Yeah. And so that was the revelation where it was like, holy shit, I got to forgive my mom for something? Yeah. And
so that wasn't even a thought that you had.
No way.
Because that was going to be my next question, is can people emotionally heal about things they didn't even know they needed to?
Totally. My intention around that was healing my relationship with the feminine. Right. I devoted an entire year of my life to healing my relationship with the feminine. And, that was that ceremony. I remember it distinctly. I wanted to heal my relationship with the feminine. And I was driving to Burning Man, to bring it back, going up the 395. We were going on the June Lake Loop, I think. And I was driving with a love partner that I had reunited with. And she was practicing nonviolent communication. And I was practicing it for the first time with her. And I love NVC. And it gets you into a pretty vulnerable space pretty quickly. And this woman and I had a history, and I wish I could tell you what we were talking about, but I can't. Yeah. But something she said, again, it was like that seed, like something burst open inside of me, and I'm driving on this beautiful lakefront road, and I had to pull over the car because I was sobbing so hard. Yeah. And I looked down at the dots, the Kambô gates on my arm, which were healed by that point. And I swear to God, they were glowing bright white. Wow. And this revelation of forgiveness from my mother just slammed me like a ton of bricks. And I just sat there and cried and cried and cried while this woman, my ex-partner, just put her hand on my heart and just played with my hair, and it was just this beautiful. And then I went to Burning Man, you know. It was just this beautiful revelation where I was like, wow, Jesus,
that must have been a nice week to walk in there with that giant weight lifted off your shoulders.
Absolutely,
because like that week, this has been my experience. Like definitely, like the week after you get a big shift is like just awesome.
Oh yeah,
it's like the best ever.
Absolutely, and the days after Kambô are like that as well. Like I'm telling you, man, 98% of people I work on have this. Their reaction varies from that was horrible, but I'm coming back to I'm never going to do that again, and guaranteed. Within 3 days, they're all like, "Hey, when's the next one, man?" I mean, I worked on a guy this weekend who was he was dying. He was having a real hard time, and he texted me today. He's like, "I feel incredible. When are you coming back to Phoenix, man?" Because it does. It feel I call it like it's. I like using the word fuerte for it, or just there's the call like "Viva Kambô, Viva," because it's just life. Like physically, you feel great. You feel like all this. It lifts the fog. It lifts the fog physically. It lifts the fog mentally, and it lifts the fog spiritually, emotionally. Where the metaphor I was using with one of my clients this weekend was that he was looking for clarity in his life. And this was the guy that ended up experiencing total rebirth breakthrough. He literally said it 10 minutes after he kind of came back down, got his feet on the ground. We were getting some food in him. He's like, "You know that scene in The Matrix where Neo wakes up and all he sees are zeros and ones?" And I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "Yeah, I'm there right now." And they all, as I was saying, the metaphor I was using for him was like, if you think of life as a game of chess, and we're hopefully moving our way up from being a pawn to being a rook to being a knight to being a king to being a queen as you mature and go into your elderhood and learn these lessons. And if sometimes you feel like not only can you not see 3 moves ahead, but you're not even really sure where the pieces are, Kambô just lifts all of that. You're like, ha ha, there's my rook, there's my knight, there's my queen, and I totally see this pattern ahead. I totally see it. I got it. This is what I got to do, and I'm doing it. It's courageous medicine. It's really courageous medicine, and it gives people a lot of courage, and it gives people a lot of healing. And it gives people a lot of inspiration. And I've developed, just out of a sheer need for my clients, an entire Kambô coaching program where I'm doing serious work with people. These are people whose lives was literally actually going down the toilet. Yeah. Like I might die, or I might lose my job, or I might end up on the streets. And working with Kambô, and sometimes we throw some sweat lodges in there, and then just get them on a good coaching program after that. It's amazing what this stuff does. And a lot of times there are people that they've tried the other things and they're not working for them. But so far, thank God, the results are really, really astounding. They're really
so you haven't had anybody yet that has been like, "Nope, this sucks. I'm not really happy I did this."
No. I have not had that experience at all. I can think of one person that didn't come back, and I just think that's because he's like super flighty dude. He's got 10 million things going on. Like if I talked to him tonight and was like, "Hey, want to do Kambô?" He'd be like, "Yeah, let's do it." No. There's one person who I was like, I am fairly certain that she is never going to come back. And I walked in, I worked on her, and she had a miserable time. She was weaning off of depression meds. And when she purged, she said it tasted like when you chew pills. And she was dead on her feet the next day, because on the chain of reactions in the day following, best being you feel like you have superpowers, the worst on the other side of that coin can be like you feel like you have the flu. Because it's just forcing all these toxins out of you. And she felt like she had the flu. And I walked into her studio that day as she was telling her client how horrible the Kambô experience was. And then I showed up. I was like, "Hey!" And she's like, "Perfect timing." And she's like, "Edward, I really just don't think I'm going to do that again. Like, I love you. I trust you. I want to keep working with you, but I just don't think it's for me." I was like, "Yeah, fine." And the next day, she was like, "I know I need to do it again." So it can be a reluctance about it. but it's just they know they need to. They know it's just the medicine that they need.
It is typically a multiple session thing.
3.
Typically 3.
Typically 3. What I say to my clients is if you do it once and you're like, never ever again, fair enough. Never again.
Does anybody do it once and go, oh, I feel really good. I'm going to stick with this for a while?
Yes. Yes, they do.
It's not calling me back yet.
Exactly. Yeah. I've had that happen. That is rare, but I've had that happen. Most people, because I'm not like, I don't push this on anyone because and my schedule's like super full. I just can't pack in all the people that want to do this as quickly as I would like. Most people completely of their own volition express a desire to get it done like sooner rather than later. They really want to keep going with the 3. It builds momentum. It builds up in your body. You build momentum in your life, and it builds upon itself. So most people are very much in the willingness to keep doing it, even if they sit down and they're like, oh, hell, But it's a little bit of pain for a whole lot of payoff.
Right.
A whole lot of payoff.
Right. And as I was asking you before the show, so it is totally legal.
It is legal in every country in the world.
Okay. That's amusing to me. Usually it seems like they can't wait to make something that's medicine illegal.
Right.
But so it's totally legal. So let's say I want to have this experience. What do I do? Can I Google Kambô? I mean, how does it work?
Well, there is actually an international organization, the International Kambô Practitioners Association, or it might be the International Association of Kambô Practitioners.
Okay.
I might get it's one of those two.
Because not all of our listeners are in San Diego.
Absolutely. You can go through the International Association of Kambô Practitioners. It's iakp.org, and they have listings of practitioners all over the world. Now, I, for instance, at this moment, am not listed through that organization because I have not taken their training yet, because it's really hard to get into because this stuff is just increasing in popularity. I was on the waiting list for last year's training, and they were only doing one. They do them in I think at least a dozen, if not 16 different countries, and they were only doing one training per year in each country.
Right.
They had to up it to do 2 trainings in certain countries, and the U.S. was one of them. So I've actually been on the waiting list twice and not gotten in. It's like getting tickets to Burning Man, honestly. The training opens up, and if you don't get on that, it's full by that night. Yeah. So the past one, I was like, I'm getting into this training. I was in touch with them for weeks beforehand. I was actually in Mongolia when it opened it up. So I'm arranging bank transfers and doing all this shit from this hotel in Ulaanbaatar, the capital of Mongolia. And I got into the training. Yeah. So I will be on that list as of May when I take the training. So that's one resource to do it. I feel like if you're on the West Coast, there's practitioners all over the place. If you're on the East Coast, there's a fair amount. There's a lot of them in the UK and Europe. Australia, I think there's a few in Australia too that I know of actually. Ideally, you would want to go through an IAKP approved practitioner, or at the very least, someone that you really, really trust, that to do this stuff. So like I said, I'm not on the IAKP list. I've been trained by a very, very experienced practitioner who's been working with it for a long time, and I work legally for an aftercare center. So
how, if somebody wants to get in contact with you, how could they go about doing it?
The best way right now is Edward Hillard Deull on Facebook. The middle name is Hillard. The last name is Deull. And friend me on Facebook.
And if any listeners, you're trying to find Edward, feel free to go to burnerpodcast.com and message our staff through there, and somebody will respond to you and put you in touch. If that's hard to remember right now.
Because
a lot of times people listen to the podcast are like riding their bike or driving or something. So
fair.
Somebody's trying to scramble for a pen.
Don't write and drive. Or
go to burnerpodcast.com, shoot us a message, we'll connect you.
Yeah. But yeah, if you're in the San Diego, Southern California area, I mean, I've traveled. I've gone to Arizona with it. I'm going to British Columbia with it. There's a high probability that I'll be going to Utah and Las Vegas and Colorado with it as well.
What sorts of costs would people be looking at if they're going through the organization, through you? What do people need to know in order to do it? Like, do they need to prepare ahead of time? Do they need to fast?
Yes. Okay. I can't speak for the organization or what other practitioners charge. I've heard of people charging anywhere from like $50 to $60 for a ceremony to like $180, $200 plus for a ceremony. My rate for groups, in local groups, I do 80 to 120 on a sliding scale per person, and I never turn anyone away. So what that means is if people are experiencing some kind of financial hardship or they're paycheck to paycheck or whatever, but they really feel like they need this stuff, we'll get them in a group and it's totally fine. I'm not in the business of turning people away.
How big is the group usually?
I tend to not work on more than 5 or 6 people at a time because I just want to, just for the preservation of the container, let's keep it smaller.
So are there like 6 people vomiting in your living room?
Yeah, absolutely. My neighbors love me, man. There's always buckets on the porch. My neighbors, it's really fun. I think it's just divine timing that literally I'll have people coming through the door with their pillows and their blankies and their ponchos, and my neighbors like walking off at the exact same time. It seems to always happen like that. So as far as a financial commitment, that's what it is. I charge more for privates because it's simply just a lot of work. So. Depending on the person, I'll charge, it's like 160 to 200 on a sliding scale for a private session, but it's because that's intense. Privates are intense.
So what you're describing sounds a lot like the same kind of structure as a lot of the ayahuasca sessions that we've heard of too.
Yeah, it's less expensive than ayahuasca for sure. So it's less of a financial commitment. It is less of a dietary commitment in that like.
Do I need to do anything to prepare for it?
Yeah, absolutely. You need to stay hydrated, be very mindful of drinking water, and you need to eat well with regard to just common sense. It's not this specific thing like thou shalt not eat these 7 things, and just eat really, really well. Don't eat anything heavy. Don't eat a lot of meat. Don't drink a ton of coffee. Don't drink any booze.
That day or that week?
I would say a minimum of 72 hours before. Okay. And a big thing is marijuana. It's not a contraindication, and you won't find this in the literature. This is just something that I have experienced with people, is that people that are heavy users of marijuana, if you're a heavy user of marijuana, it puts cobwebs in your system. I think we can all agree on that. It's great medicine for some people, everything in moderation. There's nothing wrong with it. But for people that are like just stoners, it's cobwebby. And then the combo has to like go through all this stuff to get down to what it needs to get down to. So some of my clients are using marijuana medicinally for anxiety or pain or whatever. I'm like, you go ahead, keep doing that because you're using it the right way. But if people are just smoking pot, I'm like, don't smoke pot before combo. Obviously, don't drink. Obviously, don't do any sort of other recreational medicines. For people that are using other plant medicines, combo's actually really good with other plant medicines. It does a lot of the heavy lifting. If you're on medicines that I wouldn't do them really, really close to each other, but it doesn't mean that you have to separate them by weeks or months. Right. The day of, I would not take caffeine the day of. Doesn't mean that you can't have a cup of coffee the day before. I would not take caffeine the day of. I would have my clients be on an empty stomach for preferably 8 hours, if not more. But to have a decent breakfast, or if I'm working people in the morning, like just eat a decent dinner the night before. I don't want people dragging themselves in because they have no strength, but I also don't want people having a full stomach. So it's that line. Have your intentions prepared. And I'm really, really big on, again, the ceremonial and spiritual aspect of this, where it's like, reach out to the spirit of the frog for days beforehand and give thanks for it, be in gratitude for it. Let it know that you're coming. I've seen this. I saw an extraordinarily profound example of this a week ago at the aftercare center at Samsara Aftercare, where a gentleman was welcoming the frog with open arms. He didn't know tons about it. He was very, very willing to do it. He had already gone through his Ibogaine treatment, and he was just like, I'm ready. I'm ready. I embrace this with all of my heart. I am so grateful to receive this right now. and holy cow, did it go to work on him. It's the way I put it is, and I'll have to explain it because people can't see my hands, but the medicine enters your system and it becomes a stream that gets bigger and bigger and wider. And with willingness, you meet that. And it's like, so instead of hiding and having the medicine come to you and have that stream decrease in power, you move towards it so that you meet it in the middle. And then you're meeting it when it's at its height of power. And that's through willingness, through acceptance, and through gratitude of the medicine, and through also establishing a relationship with the frog. And that would look like, in the days beforehand, for people that keep a meditation or a prayer practice, just sending some thoughts out to the frog, just saying thank you, just saying, hey, this is what I'm working on. Please hear me. Whatever that looks like to people. And to be in that willingness, like really, 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 it allows the frog to do a lot more work.
And it sounds like it wouldn't hurt to have like the next day off work.
It wouldn't hurt. It's not necessary.
Because what if like I get the flu the next day? Like
exactly, and that is a what if, Because if I feel like Superman, I'd like to just have the day off and go explore a little bit. I would encourage people at the very least to like not have to go to work at 9 a.m. the next day. I will typically, if I do these at night, I'll typically do them where it's a weekend, or for service industry people, a Monday or Tuesday where they have the next day off. And if I do them in the morning, obviously people are they're going to have at least an entire day to recoup and do their thing. So there's advantages to doing them either one. But yeah, ideally, you would have the next day off. If you don't have the next day off, it's cool. Yeah. I used to drive out to Desert Hot Springs 3 hours, do Kambô, drive 3 hours back, and go to work the next day. Yeah. But I was a little crazy.
Nice. So Edward, I know you've been telling me for a while that this is pretty much taking up a lot of your practice these days, and I know you're working on you still have the Story Consortium.
Yep.
What are the things that you're working on right now that people can check out?
We have the Story Consortium, which is on Facebook. You can check out the Story Consortium. Our website, which is not up yet, but it will be, is www.thestoryconsortium.com. We are using storytelling as a modality for personal healing, for empowerment, and for unification among the group.
I saw that you talked to Halcyon about that recently.
Talked to Halcyon about that. Yeah, we had a great podcast. I was on Hug Nation, and I was on another podcast called The Ronnie Landis Show. Ronnie Landis is a healer and motivational speaker. And that work's been taken off, honest to God, because I feel like people, especially in the wake of the election and this and that, people are seeking community.
Yeah.
And storytelling, especially transformative storytelling, which is what we do at the Story Consortium, and the way that we establish it, it's instant community. It is just instant community. It's just like, just add story, and it's really been taking off. I am going to be meeting with San Diego Youth Services in a couple of weeks to get this into school districts out in East County.
Oh, beautiful.
We're going to be moving into doing retreats and workshops with organizations and corporations as well. So a lot of good work going on with the Story Consortium. I also facilitate a men's circle here in the San Diego area that is called Brothers United, the San Diego Men's Council. You can get in touch with me vis-a-vis the staff of Burner Podcast, or if you can remember my name, look me up on Facebook.
I'm constantly pushing people towards that circle. It's an amazing experience.
Yeah.
It's very important. It's something we'll definitely do a show about that at some point, but just the masculine energy definitely feels like has not had enough outlets in society for exploring emotions and all of these things. So I mean, you're really doing an amazing service by doing that. I've personally benefited off of it, and I've sent people your way.
I appreciate it. It's that work is growing as well. Yeah. We do talking circles. We do indigenous style talking circles, passing a talking stick, agreements on the 4 intentions of counsel, which the Story Consortium uses 3 of the 4 intentions of counsel as well. And those quickly are speaking from the heart, listening from the heart, practicing attentive listening, in counsel practicing spontaneity, meaning we don't rehearse what we're going to say. We just wait until the talking stick touches our hands and let that moment speak through us. And then confidentiality. Yeah. So that's going really well. We did a men's retreat out in Joshua Tree, not last weekend, but the weekend before. We had 12 guys out in the desert and sweat lodges and talking circles. And once again, and these guys didn't know each other that well, but every one of them says the phrase at some point, I've never said this to anyone before, but here goes. It's like you said, it's just getting it out, airing the wound. It's a practice of what I call empowered vulnerability, finding empowerment in one's own vulnerability. So the men's work is going really, really well. I am doing more public retreats and workshops with the Story Consortium and one-on-one work with people as well, doing storytelling as an act of healing. So transformative storytelling, talking people through the stories that they allow to conceive limiting belief systems within themselves and releasing those through writing and through energy work. I will have a page to stage workshop coming up. I do page to stage coaching with people and writing coaching. So getting people, getting their story from the head to the heart, to the page, to the stage, so that they can speak it aloud. And we are going to have a storytelling for survivors page to stage workshop coming up. I've linked up with an organization called the Daily Survivor, which is started by a longtime participant with the Story Consortium. Her name's Anastasia. That's thedailysurvivor.com. And we're going to be, actually, our next theme at Trilogy Sanctuary is I Will Survive. And it's going to be stories of surviving, of people who have made it. And we're going to do a Storytelling for Survivors course. So I'm super excited about that. And I'm doing a lot of coaching work with people, working with people who are, whether they're coming out of addiction or going, like, we actually kind of did a little bit of this, like just working with people who are quote unquote waking up and who have questions and who are like, man, a lot of
we listeners, meaning me and him.
I've
had some energy work done with Edward. That's a whole. I may have told the story a couple of times on the show. I don't know.
Yeah, that was a deep one that you had.
I've lost track of how much personal shit the listeners know about me, to be honest.
Well, empowered vulnerability, man.
Yeah, I'm with it.
So,
Edward, thank you so much.
Yeah, my pleasure, brother.
Telling you the story.
Thank you for taking the time.
Everything you do. You are a beautiful human being, and I am proud to call you a friend.
Oh, much love, brother. Thanks for having me on the show. Yeah.
Burner Podcast.
All right, that was Edward. Hey, you might be noticing that usually we do this little mid-show break, in the middle of the conversation, but, today we said, fuck it, let's just put it all the way at the end before you hear those other two little segments that I teased you guys about. But for the quick break, I just want to tell you guys one of the other projects that Edward is working on, which is really wonderful. The Story Consortium is a San Diego, California-based organization devoted to creating a safe and supportive space for people to gather as a community and share their stories. They host open mic nights every third Thursday at Trilogy Sanctuary in La Jolla, which is also here in San Diego, and can be found at retreats, workshops, and festivals throughout Southern California and the West Coast. Go ahead and like their Facebook page, the Story Consortium, to be kept up to date on all the events that are going on. The website, thestoryconsortium.org, is coming soon, so you can kind of plug that into your browser and hit refresh over and over until it shows up. But for the time being, just go ahead and like the Facebook page. That's going to be the best place to keep up with the Story Consortium. So next, you're going to be hearing from Rebekah and Charles, not in that order. First, you're going to hear Charles, and then you're going to hear Rebekah. And they're going to be telling you about their experiences with the Kambô frog. So let's get into it.
Welcome home.
Red ants that they show up every once in a while when I've washed my plates and there's something sweet.
Yeah.
And I just stood there and I had this long, so I turn on the water, the sink to wash them down. And I always think to myself, I wonder if there's some ants a little further away that are guys, the thing up there rains death on us but they're so tiny that time is different, the way they perceive time.
For sure.
So they've already gone through multiple generations of families and they're all working to bring back food for the queen. I wonder if a lot of the ants are just excited about buying ant rims and living in an ant house. But then there's that one ant that's guys, I'm telling you, you got to watch out for that thing. They're shut the fuck up, Steve.
Yeah. The dude predicting.
Don't be fucking stupid.
Predicting the earthquake.
Yeah. And then so that ant, goes to Ant Burning Man and discovers ant polyamory. And like the rest of the ants are just like doing what the queen tells them, and then it rains death on them. And then so they try to pass the story down, but then of course these ants don't survive long enough either because they're like the more intellectual ants. Because the worker ants, like they can fight and build, but like these guys. So then they pass the stories down through their own experiences, and eventually when it gets down to the other ants, it's become this whole thought system. But by then it's all convoluted with stories about like the metal god in the sky that rains death on you. But by then it's too late. They've already forgotten all about this previous generation, even though they're telling them like. That's the kind of shit I think about when I'm washing the dishes. but I've always imagined, like, you look at human behavior, the more we zoom out, the more ant-like it is, the more mechanical it is. And here we are thinking, we're so unique. But that's how Amazon knows that you're going to order something Google, and they can bring it to you in a day. Okay, so Charles, we have you... We just recorded another episode, which the listeners are going to hear at a later date, which is about the Ibogaine Aftercare Center that you run. But today we're going to talk very quickly about your experiences with the Kambô frog. Yeah. When was the first time you partook?
I partook it was probably about 3 years ago. Mm-hmm. I heard about Kambô. I was reading about it online. Arrowhead or some site like that, and I was reading about it, and they were talking about how only warriors do Kambô and all this stuff, and so I said, okay, well, I'm going to do this, because I was still in a phase of, if you compare me to like nations, I was in my phase of like explore and conquer, exploring the new world. Mm-hmm. So I was like, I'm going to do Kambô. So I ordered online, I ordered some sticks online. And I get the sticks, and I'm like, okay, well, let's do this thing. Yeah. So I burn some dots on my arm, and I make up my Kambô, my slime, some spit. I throw it on my arm, and go through a really uncomfortable 20 minutes, 30 minutes. I didn't purge the first time. I think I only did like 6-7 dots, So, and, didn't know what I was doing for sure. So I was laying in the bathroom, I was next to the toilet.
Because you were expecting to
throw up? Yeah, I was
up.
expecting to throw up, going to throw up in the toilet. And just laying there on the bathroom floor, like sweating and super uncomfortable.
Were you hoping for a psychedelic experience?
No.
Just thought it would be some sort of improvement?
Just wanted to see what it was going to do.
Okay.
Yeah, see what it was going to do. So then I tried again a week later, and I think I did 9 dots, and that definitely brought about a purge. That was really challenging, super challenging. And then, my face is all swelled up. That was actually, I think it was either that time or the next time I did it. It was Christmas, actually, Christmas Eve, and I went to a party afterwards, and my face was all swollen. And they wanted me to eat dinner and stuff, and I couldn't even eat. And I went home early because I was just super out of it.
So wait, that was the third time you did it?
Either the second or the third. Where?
Well, what did you get out of it the first couple of times you did that made you say I want to do it a third time?
I don't even know. I can't even tell you.
Did you feel better afterwards?
No.
No.
I just wanted to keep doing it 3 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm one of those people that. I'll do something, and then even if it's terrible, I'll still get myself like the shadow of doubt. Okay, well, I'll do it again.
Yeah,
I'll do it again. I may do it 3 or 4 times just to like see what it's going to do. And sometimes I just do stuff for the hell of it, just to do it. And this was kind of one of those. So the third time I do it, I did 11 dots, and quickly wiped it off because I was getting so sick. Yeah, and that was really challenging. And then I was like, okay, good for a while. And then the fourth time I did it was the last time I did it on my own, myself, because I did it right before I did Ibogaine the second time. Mm-hmm. So I had read that you can do Kambô before Ibogaine, and it actually potentiates the Ibogaine experience. Mm. And I was doing Ibogaine for the second time. It was a year and a half later. I was clean and sober, but I wanted to have the spiritual vision experience that I'd been reading about
with Ibogaine.
Okay,
so just clarification for listeners, because that episode is going to air later. We are going to get into all the background story of your addiction with heroin. This was a few years ago. And you experienced ibogaine in order to pass through that experience. And that led to you running this aftercare center. But then the second time you did ibogaine, you wanted to really have
a spiritual experience.
Thing. Okay.
Yeah. So I did Kambô the night before, on my own again. And, it was pretty normal. No big deal. The next morning I did ibogaine.
Normal as far as putting toad poison into your body.
Yeah, gotcha. Going through 20 minutes of extreme pain. And then the next morning I did the ibogaine, and it was the ibogaine experience. It was so strong that I pretty much went unconscious. I don't remember anything from it.
Wow.
And then for a few days, I was totally out of it. And for about a week and a half, I was totally out of it afterwards. So that was the last time I did Kambô on my own. It totally made it so I just got wrecked.
Yeah. So flash forward a little bit. You end up
having
supervised.
So flash forward a little bit. I opened this aftercare center, which is working with people after they've done ibogaine, coming out of addiction. And I recognize the benefits of Kambô. And I see Kambô as a great one. I see it practically as an amazing tool to make someone uncomfortable. In my other episode, I explained how being uncomfortable is very important, and Kambô is probably the most uncomfortable you can make a person feel, I think, in a short amount of time, which with also some spiritual benefits, and physical benefits. So
that's what I'm trying to figure out, though. So the experiences that you had didn't seem to give you much of that.
No, but I was doing it in a very novice kind of just experimental way. So I didn't have a purpose. Right. My intention was not set for anything. So now at the aftercare center, we give it to people and we prepare them beforehand. And we let them know what's going to be going on. Edward, who you had on, who talks more about this in depth. He comes and he serves the medicine to the people. And many of them, they really get a lot out of it, because what happens is all the trauma, all the negative energy that they've taken on over the years, they can actually address that and get rid of it, purge it through the Kambô experience. Plus the fact that the next day, a lot of them attest that it makes them feel great. They feel really good afterwards, kind of a refreshed feeling. Yeah.
So when was the first time you had a supervised experience?
It was about 5 months ago.
Okay, that was with Edward.
Yeah. No, that was actually with someone else. Okay. That we brought here first, and I was the first time that we brought Kambô to the aftercare center. They needed a guinea pig to go first, and I volunteered. I volunteered.
So what was it like? What did you have intentions set?
Even that time, I didn't really have intention set for that either. I was doing
just to see what happens.
I was doing it to set an example, to show them it was going to be okay to be, but one thing is, they were all kind of witnessing and watching me very closely go through this. And so I wanted them to understand that, it's uncomfortable, but it's okay. And so my goal was to do the medicine and let it happen. It reminded me similarly of when I went to Peru and I did tobacco purge, which is similar. You drink tobacco juice and you purge. You do that before you begin your diets with ayahuasca, and it just is to clear you out. You don't necessarily, they don't tell you really you have an intention. It's kind of like they're clearing out your system before you start. So that's kind of how I viewed it. It's just kind of clearing me out. Now when I do it, I actually did it yesterday with Edward, and I had very specific intentions.
What was your intentions?
To release and let go of the judgment and the negative feelings that I've had while working in this space. In this working in an aftercare house and working with people in addiction, there's a lot of turmoil. There's a lot of stuff going on, and you gotta deal with a lot that can kind of tense you up and leave things within you. And so my goal was to allow myself to let all that go, to allow myself to release any of that I was still holding on to unconsciously.
How many dots did you have?
7.
Okay. Wow. And then, so how long was the experience?
I don't know. I don't ever time it.
I mean, is it an hour or 5 hours?
No, it was probably 20 to 30 minutes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So ballpark.
Yeah.
Yeah. And how did you feel afterwards?
Afterwards, super tired.
Yeah.
I slept most of the day. I slept at night. I felt good this morning, woke up. Still, I mean, I still noticed this morning there was some slight puffiness to my face still, because it was a pretty intense one.
Yeah.
It was probably the first time I've done it where I really just immediately was letting go of the energy of the stuff, that I needed to get rid of. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I feel way better, but physically I think tomorrow is going to really start to notice the effects.
What sorts of effects do you think?
Just like vigor, excitedness, I mean, people noticed that about me yesterday too. It was just when I walk in the door, my attitude had changed. But that comes with circumstance as well. And I did it too because I'm going to Brazil in 2 days, and I'm kind of like clearing some intention,
nice.
Defining some boundaries with things. And yeah.
How long do the effects last typically?
Well, with anything, I look at us, as kind of like a computer, right? And so Kambô is like a defrag.
Yeah.
So I just defragged a lot of the files, right? But I'm going to go through life, and there's going to be more fragmentation that occurs. That the effects of clearing out those past things that occurred are permanent. I'm never going to have those experiences again. They were what they were, and now I let go of them, and I move through them and learn from them and step into my next space of experiences where I can bring in whatever it is I have to take in.
Yeah.
So I think with each one, the effects are permanent and they last forever. What you get from it, like any living medicine that you do. But yeah, I would say probably noticeable physical effects will probably be like, a couple of weeks.
Yeah. Because it's I've described it in the past as like, if you've been smoking weed all day and eventually you just kind of forget that you're high and it just becomes normal. It's similar. Yeah. So that I think the defrag is like the perfect description for what it is. Like you're still going to have a memory of those things that happened, but the tension is no longer tucked away in your body. As the same as it was before. Yeah. How often do you enjoy doing it?
Like to do enjoy. That's a good word.
Enjoy.
Enjoy. Actually, have you done it?
No.
Oh man, you got to enjoy doing it.
Yeah.
I'll probably go through a cycle when I get back from Brazil and do it 3 times in a lunar cycle. It's not something I really like doing a whole lot because it's intense. It's very challenging. Yeah. Physically, I mean, it's like you're purging, but it's definitely not the worst thing I've ever. It's definitely not worse. It's definitely not the most challenging thing I've ever done. So I don't know. Probably 2 to 3 times a year. I would say would be.
Does it hurt everywhere?
Oh yeah.
Like from head to toe.
I mean, it's not like you're isolated in like hurt throughout your entire body. It's just you're in a state of discomfort, right? And you're in this state of. It's not even like it's nausea. I can't even call it nausea because it's not in your head. It's just like your body is pulling stuff out. And my head was very clear. My intention and my thoughts were very centered and focused because I knew what I was doing when I went into it. And as I was exploring those thoughts, things were coming out, right? Things were coming out until no more needed to come out.
Yeah. Wow. I feel like do you think like eating healthy ahead of time is highly recommended?
I mean, yeah, I think eating healthy is always recommended.
Yeah.
I definitely think it can help. I've seen some people do Kambô. We had one guy do it who had been using alcohol for 20, 30 years. And he had a really challenging experience. It lasted 7-8 hours, which I'd never seen before. And it was super challenging. But the next day, he was like a different person. And then the subsequent times he did it, it was just like a whole new world for him. I mean, it was super powerful.
Since recording the interview with Edward, I've talked to a few people about it, and different people have had different stories. And it seems like, this is completely not scientific, but it seems like how much you have been fighting, for lack of a better description, spiritual growth can affect how harsh the trip is.
Yeah.
So like, I think one story I heard was about a woman who was like kind of jacked up for like 24 hours from doing Kambô, but like she had literally like never had any sort of spiritual thought process. But then after this like 24 hours to 48 hours of like just not being herself, she ended up like quitting her job and starting a very successful business. And there was like a giant life shift. But like, if you're somebody who is like us, like we're already sort of on this path and we're already, like, you know, doing a lot of this work, it feels like it's probably like a faster experience.
Yeah.
But it's total, but like, this is totally anecdotal. I don't know.
No, I agree. I agree. I think, I mean, I think it has its physical effects for sure on everyone. And then some people really resonate with it. I think it's those people that truly resonate with it a lot that are the ones that have the longer, more challenging experiences, but it's because the frog's working with them on a deeper level.
Right.
Totally.
Yeah. And so you, the Ibogaine Aftercare Center, which is basically like a sober living type environment, which listeners, you will learn more about when that episode comes up. People, this is something you administer to everyone who comes through the process here?
Yep, everyone.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yep, and they all do it once.
Yeah.
Everyone does it once, and then some people don't do it a second time. But actually, most people do it a second time, and a lot of them choose to do it a third time.
Yeah.
So
3 seems to be the magic number.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
burnerpodcast.com.
And like trying to delegate things to certain people.
No, well, after Utopia, I lost my voice for no reason whatsoever. I didn't yell or scream much. It just happened. And then I talked to like a few other people the same thing happened to.
Yeah.
I think like some sort of bacterial infection happens.
Well, it's like a lot of dust and dirt, you know.
Where you were was really a lot of dust? Yeah.
It's really cold.
I think the cold weather will affect it too.
Yeah, for sure.
And like everybody was like, I didn't get sick or anything. The voice just got up and walked away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It happens.
Well, good. I've been recording, so at least this will clarify for the listeners why your voice sounds like that.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for coming on, answering some questions. So you've had the frog ceremony how many times?
I've done it twice, personally.
Okay. When was your first time?
First time was the beginning of this year.
Okay.
Sometime around like March.
Okay. And second time?
Was about a month or 2 ago.
Cool. Okay. So what was it that called you to it? It's like why were you interested in doing it to begin with?
You know, I didn't really know anything about Kambô.
Mm-hmm.
I did a shamanic journey. And I was in a circle for about 3 months. And in this journey, the frog kept coming up to me.
Yeah.
And making its appearance. And
like in what you were seeing while you were under? Okay.
In the visions, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Under drum.
Mm-hmm.
And my teacher had mentioned that it would probably be good for me to do frog medicine.
Oh, interesting.
Or
Okay.
to work with frog.
Yeah. So tell me about what it was like. Like, how did you feel before doing it? Did you have a lot of anxiety? What was the experience like?
Well, you know, just like anything else, you don't really know what to expect.
Mm-hmm. Well, anything else in the kinds of stuff that we do.
Yeah.
I don't know about anything else, like, just like any other wine bar in downtown.
This is unlike anything I've ever done.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, you asked.
What was the experience like?
The experience was, well, going into it, again, you know, you don't know what to expect, and so you're under the guidance of the teacher.
Mm-hmm.
So I did a lot of meditation beforehand.
Yeah.
And while undergoing it, it was really painful.
How long did it last for you?
I was told that I had the medicine on me for about 45 minutes.
Okay.
But it takes a little while to come back and to process everything. Because it happens on such an unconscious level. It's not like hallucinogenic where it's like you see things.
Right.
It's the MAOI inhibitors going in, doing the work, and you could feel the medicine traveling to certain parts. When we bring up a lot of heat.
Had you set an intention for what you wanted to work on?
Absolutely. 3 days beforehand. And it's funny because I went to a friend's gathering and we started playing musical instruments and dancing. And this guy comes up and gives me a frog instrument.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. The one that goes like you scratch on it? Yeah, yeah. Sounds like a bullfrog. Yeah.
Exactly. So I was like, okay, like, this song is for you. Played with the frog.
Yeah. What was the intention you'd set for yourself, though, like, internally? Was there something specifically you wanted to work on that you could talk about?
Yes. My number one thing was to heal past traumas in relationships. And that was kind of an open blanket.
Not any specific kinds of relationships, just kind of like all of them?
Relationships.
Yeah. And then, so how did you feel? So I'm assuming you basically spent 45 minutes purging.
Yeah, so when I first did the medicine, it traveled to my throat. And my entire throat swelled up. My voice sounds like it does now.
Yeah. Oh, good. So we're getting a feeling of what it was like, yeah.
Precisely, a frog in the throat.
Yeah.
And then it traveled straight to my head. I felt like my brain was expanding to the point where my head might pop.
Yeah.
And then it traveled straight down into the lower chakras.
How long did that brain feeling last?
Gosh, it could have been a minute, but
okay.
Felt...
But it felt like your brain swelled up.
So long, yeah.
Yeah. And then, so 45 minutes later, and then so were you kind of out of it for a while, or did you need to, like, rest? How did that work?
Yeah, once the experience was over, like, once it's there, you're like, oh my God, I don't know if I can handle this.
Yeah, yeah.
Is it supposed to be this way? Am I supposed to be able to breathe? And after a little while, it gets better. And when it starts getting better, all you can think of is like, oh my God, the worst is over.
Yeah.
And yes, you purge a lot. And near the end of it, it's your body just goes through so much that it's really hard to explain. The next day, you're sleeping until then. You just don't really want to do much of anything.
Yeah. You're very exhausted. Slept in the next day. So, like, your recommendation to someone would be, like, if you're going to do it, take, like, the next day off work.
Yes.
Yeah.
Or you do something, like, that's so nourishing that, like, it'll be, like, to work on the self.
So when the exhaustion faded away, how did you feel?
You know that feeling that you get when you, like, have worked really, really hard?
When you what?
When you work really, really hard.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And
like accomplished?
Yeah, and like it's also like a sense of peace, like tranquility.
Yeah.
Like the storm has passed.
Right. I've always, whenever I've had any sort of like energy work or anything done, I can sort of feel like something has shifted in that, like I feel this weight lifted off my back.
Yes.
Like physically.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's part of it. Or it can be.
How, so, I mean, your intention was to work on relationships. So, like, did you have anything measurable that you could look at and say, oh, look, here's a shift that happened after the experience?
Absolutely. I'm very empathic. And a lot of times what happens is I take on people's judgments or whatever, not really realizing it. And for a while there, it would affect my heart and I could feel it. Once I did my first Kambô ceremony, it felt like whatever it was cleared out so many chakras that by the time anything got to my heart, it didn't really affect me and I felt protected.
Right. That's interesting. Because I try to, on the show, I can, full disclosure, I'm completely understanding what you're describing. Like I'm experiencing a lot of things the same way. But I always think it's interesting to also look at it from multiple angles. So like to me, like even what you're describing could also be interpreted as you're what's called a highly sensitive person. Like you can like you pick, we do this, like we just pick up on energies, and like it could be that from an energetic or spiritual angle, we could see it as like it's going through, you know, the chakras, and then like from just even like a basic psychology level, it's empathy, you know, empath, like that's definitely, that is a common thing. Like highly sensitive person is actually what they call that personality type.
Correct.
So like picking up the energies. So that's interesting. So like do you feel that so you're what you're describing is that you used to pick up on those kind of things from other people a lot harder, and now it's like softened. It doesn't seem to like feel like as strong of a blow anymore.
Exactly. Yeah.
And
like
then,
I felt protected and cleared out, like cleaned.
Right.
Like it's hard to explain, but you know, like that light feeling that you felt, exactly like that.
Yeah.
And the things that people would do or say wouldn't have such a negative impact on me.
Oh yeah, interesting. You were internalizing people's words less.
Yes.
Oh wow. Okay. Did you have the same intentions the second time?
No, the second time, my intention was to eliminate any blockages that might be keeping me from my path.
Like professionally, personally.
Always, even spiritually.
Did you feel, because I'm trying to like think of a frame of reference. Like usually like with ayahuasca, for example, like people will describe as like they felt like they were being called to do it a second time.
Yes.
Like, do you think it was similar?
Yes. I feel like when people are called to do medicine, it finds you.
Yeah.
And you can call out to it, but in its own time, it will be revealed. And it's the same thing with frog medicine.
Yeah.
And in fact, I feel like frog medicine is even probably something to do before going into ayahuasca.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. Get some of the purging out of the way.
Yeah, and it goes really deep. Like, really deep. I am going to be sitting in ceremony for my first time over New Year's.
Okay.
But I haven't sat with ayahuasca yet.
Yeah.
So very looking forward to that.
Interesting.
But Kambô is a medicine I can see myself working with.
Yeah. Do you, I guess it's kind of like too early to tell if, you know, how much of your path and journey's been opened up, but have you observed any immediate changes in the way that you're experiencing the world since the second ceremony?
Yeah, it's really interesting. I feel like what's been happening lately is that no matter where I go, I'll somehow end up behind the scenes of something.
Okay.
And as I'm there working, doing my work, so many people that I see, like at Burning Man, at Utopia, at these like really great gatherings, they show up.
Yeah.
And it's like a web that's being woven. And it's direct connectedness with community.
Yeah.
Because it's so important, especially in these times.
You're finding yourself in the place that's more ideal, that's most ideal to your journey in general. That's interesting. Yeah.
Well, they say that it takes teamwork to make a dream work.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I have some big dreams.
Yeah. Dig it.
So this is part of it.
Cool. Well, Rebekah, thank you so much for telling us your story.
Thank you for having me.
Appreciate it. There you have it. More about frogs than you ever thought you would learn on this show. New episodes are up on the first and third Wednesdays of the month. We are on multiple podcasting platforms such as Stitcher, TuneIn Radio, Spreaker, amongst many others. We're also on iHeart Radio. If you want to listen to the show, we are not hard to find. I don't want to say hard to find, like a really terrible, awful pun. The Burner Podcast movement is made possible due to the efforts of various contributing producers, as well as our regular staff, which include our network music editor, Navjit Sarna, who is also the producer of Burner Podcast Presents Alkaline. It's a DJ mix show. Go ahead and check that one out over at burnerpodcast.com as well. Our online editor is Tori Massey, alkaline producer Amber Rose, contributing producer Super Suze, recording engineer Freckle, chief playa scientist Ramiro Martinez, special projects manager Paul McCarthy, executive producer Meg King, and you, dear listener. Actually, there are other people. It's not just you, but there's a few other people that work on the show. There'll just be too many people. Our intermission music is by Duckman. Check out his music over at duckmansd.bandcamp.com. The Burner Podcast theme song is America's Horse with No Name remix, produced by Joman. Check out his music over at soundcloud.com/DJ Joman. So until next time, love and light and all that other crap. Good night.